The rain slammed violently against the gates of the Cole mansion as Amara struggled to pull her suitcase through the flooded driveway. Her hands trembled. Her face was soaked with tears and rainwater. Behind her, the giant mansion glowed like a palace in the darkness. "Leave this house immediately," Richard Cole's furious voice echoed from the balcony above. "A servant's daughter will never carry the Cole family name." Amara stopped walking. For one painful second, she looked up. Ethan stood beside his father, breathing heavily, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Dad, stop this," he shouted. "I love her." Richard slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed through the storm. "You are embarrassing this family over a maid's daughter?" Amara's chest tightened painfully. Ethan rushed down the stairs toward her, but Richard's security men blocked him before he could reach the gate. "Amara!" Ethan yelled desperately. "Please don't go." But Amara shook her head slowly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You should have told me the truth," she whispered. Then she turned and disappeared into the storm. Ethan screamed her name again, but this time she never looked back. 3 years earlier, the Cole mansion was the kind of place people only saw in movies. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, luxury cars lined outside like decorations. But despite all the wealth, the house felt cold. Grace Daniels moved carefully through the kitchen, carrying a tray of tea. "Amara," she called softly, "please take this upstairs to Mr. Ethan's room." Amara rolled her eyes while sketching in her notebook. "I'm not his servant." "Your mother is," Grace replied quietly. "And we need this job." Amara sighed before standing up. At 24, she had dreams bigger than the mansion walls. Fashion sketches covered almost every page of her notebook. She wanted her own clothing brand someday. Elegant African designs, modern styles mixed with culture. But dreams didn't pay bills. She carried the tray upstairs carefully. The moment she reached Ethan's room, loud music blasted from inside. She knocked. No answer. She pushed the door open slightly. Ethan Cole stood shirtless near the window, arguing angrily on the phone. "I said I'm not interested in taking over the company yet." He turned suddenly and accidentally knocked into Amara. The tea tray flew from her hands. Hot tea splashed across the floor. "My God," Ethan snapped. "Can't you watch where you're going?" Amara stared at him in disbelief. "Me?" she said angrily. "You nearly broke my arm." Ethan looked at her clothes and smirked slightly. "Oh, the nanny's daughter." Amara's eyes narrowed immediately. "And you must be the billionaire son who thinks money replaces manners." Ethan blinked. Nobody spoke to him like that, ever. "You've got a sharp mouth," he muttered, "and you've got a terrible attitude." For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then Ethan noticed the sketchbook tucked under her arm. "What's that?" "None of your business." Before she could stop him, Ethan grabbed it. He flipped through the pages. His expression changed instantly. The sketches were beautiful, elegant dresses, bold fabrics, stunning detail. "You made these?" Amara snatched the book back. "Yes." "You're actually talented, and you're actually annoying." She stormed out before he could respond. But for the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled. Over the next few days, Ethan kept finding reasons to run into her, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes in the garden, sometimes near the servants' quarters, where rich family members never went. At first, Amara ignored him, but Ethan was persistent. "You hate rich people that much?" he asked one evening while watching her sketch outside. "I hate arrogant people," she replied. "So you hate me. I barely know you." That sounded personal. Amara smirked slightly. You rich people think everything is about you. Ethan laughed unexpectedly. It surprised both of them. Slowly, the conversations became longer. Ethan began escaping family dinners just to sit with her outside. For the first time in years, he could speak freely without pretending. My father already planned my entire life, Ethan admitted one night. Business meetings, marriage, everything. So why don't you refuse? You think it's that easy? Amara looked at him quietly. You're rich, Ethan. People like me don't have choices. You do. That sentence stayed in his mind all night. One evening, Ethan found Amara sewing fabric together in the servant quarters. You made this dress? Amara nodded carefully. It's ugly, she teased. It's beautiful. She looked up slowly. Ethan meant it. No jokes, no arrogance, just honesty. That moment changed something between them. Days turned into weeks. Their arguments became playful. Their conversations became personal, then dangerous. One rainy evening, the mansion suddenly lost power. The entire house went dark. Amara was walking through the hallway when thunder exploded outside. She gasped as someone grabbed her wrist. It's me, Ethan whispered. The emergency lights flickered dimly. For a moment, they stood inches apart, close enough to hear each other breathing. You scared me, she whispered. Good. Why are you here? I was looking for you. Her heart skipped. Another thunder strike shook the mansion. Without thinking, Amara moved closer. Ethan stared into her eyes. You know this is a bad idea, she whispered. I know. If your father finds out, I don't care. But I do. Ethan stepped even closer. Amara. She tried to look away. He gently lifted her chin, and then he kissed her, softly at first, then passionately, like both of them had been holding back for too long. Amara pulled away suddenly, breathing hard. We can't do this. Too late. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole was completely in love. And for the first time in her life, Amara was terrified of how much she loved him too. If you're already enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more emotional African romance stories that keep you hooked till the end. The next morning, Amara avoided Ethan completely. Every time she heard his footsteps in the hallway, her heart raced uncontrollably. She hated how one kiss had completely destroyed the walls she spent years building. But Ethan had no intention of pretending nothing happened. At breakfast, Richard Cole sat at the long dining table reading business reports, while Ethan scrolled lazily through his phone. Grace entered quietly to serve coffee. Amara followed behind, carrying fresh fruit. The moment Ethan saw her, the corner of his lips lifted slightly. Amara immediately looked away. Richard noticed. His eyes moved slowly between them. Ethan, he said coldly, you're late for the board meeting again. I'll survive. You won't survive acting like a child forever. Ethan leaned back carelessly. Maybe I don't want your company. The atmosphere instantly tightened. Richard placed his cup down slowly. You will inherit everything I built. And maybe I want to build my own life. Richard's jaw hardened. You sound foolish. Amara quietly placed the tray down, trying not to draw attention to herself. Then Ethan suddenly spoke. Amara designs clothes. Silence. Amara froze. Richard looked at her like she barely existed. Is that supposed to impress me? Ethan ignored the insult. She's talented. Richard returned to his newspaper immediately. That's nice. The disrespect hit Amara harder than she expected. Ethan noticed her expression instantly, and for the first time, anger toward his father began growing inside him. Later that evening, Ethan found Amara near the back garden, hanging clothes to dry. You shouldn't have mentioned me at breakfast, she said immediately. Why? Because your father already looks at us like we're invisible. Ethan walked closer. You're not invisible to me. Amara tried hiding her smile. You flirt too much. And you pretend too much. Pretend what? That you don't feel this thing between us. Amara looked away quickly. You don't understand what this could cost me. Ethan's voice softened. Then let me protect you. Her eyes met his, and for one dangerous second, she believed him. From that day, their relationship deepened rapidly. Ethan started sneaking into the servant quarters late at night. Sometimes they sat outside talking for hours under the stars. Sometimes Amara showed him new dress sketches while Ethan watched her like she was the most important person in the world. One night, he brought her expensive fabrics from Paris. Amara stared at them in shock. These must have cost a fortune. So, I can't accept this. You can. No, Ethan. People like me don't survive by accepting gifts from billionaires. Ethan stepped closer. Then don't see it as a gift. What is it then? He smiled softly. An investment in your dream. Amara's chest tightened emotionally. Nobody had ever believed in her dreams before, not like this. Slowly, she touched the fabric. You really think I can become something? Ethan looked at her carefully. I think you already are. Amara nearly kissed him first that night, but suddenly footsteps echoed nearby. They separated quickly. Grace appeared from the hallway looking horrified. Oh my God! Amara's face turned pale instantly. Mama, it's not what you think. Grace pulled her aside immediately. What are you doing? She whispered harshly. We're just talking. Talking? Grace glanced nervously toward Ethan. That boy is not for you. Ethan stepped forward calmly. With respect, Mom, I care about your daughter. Grace shook her head immediately. No, you think you care about her. Rich men always think love is easy until their families remind them who they are. Ethan's expression became serious. I'm not like that. Grace looked at him sadly. Your father is. That warning stayed heavy in the air long after she left, but neither Ethan nor Amara listened. Love made them reckless. A few days later, Ethan secretly took Amara into the city for the first time. She stared out the car window nervously. If someone sees us, your father will kill both of us. He won't. You sound very confident for someone terrified of him. Ethan smirked slightly. I'm not terrified. You flinch every time he raises his voice. That one sentence silenced him. Amara immediately regretted saying it. I'm sorry. But Ethan surprised her by laughing softly. You notice too much. That's because you hide too much. They spent the entire evening together walking through the city. For once, Ethan felt normal. Not like a billionaire heir, not like a prisoner, just a man in love. At a small roadside restaurant, Amara laughed so hard at one of Ethan's jokes that she accidentally spilled juice across the table. Both of them burst into laughter, and for the first time in years, Ethan forgot the pressure waiting for him back home. But someone else noticed them too. A woman sitting across the street quietly took pictures with her phone. The next morning, those photos reached Richard Cole. Richard stared at them silently inside his office. Ethan holding Amara's hand. Ethan smiling. Ethan kissing her forehead outside the restaurant. The billionaire's face darkened slowly. A dangerous calm entered his expression. Call Ethan, he ordered coldly. Minutes later, Ethan entered the office casually. You wanted to see me? Richard tossed the photos across the desk. Ethan's face changed instantly. So it's true, Richard said quietly. Ethan remained silent. You are humiliating this family over a servant's child? I love her. Richard slammed his hand violently against the desk. You don't love her. You are distracted by poverty because you grew up spoiled and bored. Ethan's eyes hardened. You don't know anything about her. I know exactly what girls like her want. Ethan stepped forward angrily. Don't talk about her like that. Richard stood slowly. You will end this relationship immediately. No. The room became deadly silent. Richard stared at his son in disbelief. No? For once in my life, Ethan said firmly, I'm choosing something for myself. Richard's expression became terrifyingly cold. You think love is enough to survive this world? Ethan didn't answer. Richard moved closer. Do you know what happens when poor people enter wealthy families? They destroy them from inside. That's not true. It happened to your mother. Ethan froze instantly. Richard rarely mentioned her. She loved me before I became rich, Richard continued bitterly. Then wealth changed everything. Weak people cannot survive power. Amara's voice suddenly interrupted from the doorway. Then maybe money is the problem? Both men turned sharply. Amara stood there holding files, completely unaware she walked into a war. Richard stared at her with pure disgust. You should learn your place. Ethan immediately stepped beside her protectively. Don't speak to her like that. Richard laughed coldly. You're defending a maid's daughter against your own father? Amara grabbed Ethan's arm gently. Stop, please. But Ethan's anger had already exploded. No, Dad, you're the one who needs to stop. Richard pointed toward the door. Get out. Neither moved. I said get out. Amara quickly pulled Ethan away before things became worse. But as they walked out, Richard watched them with dangerous eyes, and deep inside, he made a decision. If Ethan refused to leave Amara willingly, then he would destroy the relationship himself. If you're feeling the tension already, comment below. Do you think Ethan should fight for love or obey his father? And don't forget to subscribe because the biggest betrayal in this story is still coming. For the next few days, the mansion became unbearably tense. Richard stopped speaking to Ethan unless it involved business. Ethan stopped attending family dinners completely, and Amara could feel eyes following her everywhere she walked. The workers had started whispering. The billionaire's son is obsessed with the nanny's daughter. She's trying to trap him. She wants money. Every rumor cut deeper than Amara admitted. One evening, she sat quietly outside the servant quarters, sewing fabric together when Grace approached her slowly. You need to end this before it destroys your life. Amara didn't look up. I love him. Grace's expression softened painfully. That's exactly why you should walk away. Amara finally raised her head. Mama, why are you acting like loving him is a crime? Because people like us don't survive heartbreak from powerful families. Amara's eyes filled slightly. You think he'll hurt me? Grace hesitated. No, but his father will. Inside the mansion, Ethan was fighting his own battle. Richard entered his office carrying documents. You're attending the Wellington Gala tomorrow night. I'm not interested. You are. Ethan looked up impatiently. Why? Richard tossed a photo onto the desk. A beautiful, wealthy young woman smiled elegantly at the camera. Victoria Wellington, Richard said. Her father owns half the oil companies in this country. Ethan rolled his eyes immediately. I don't care. You should. She's intelligent, educated, and from a respected family. Ethan laughed bitterly. So this is about marriage now? This is about your future. My future isn't a business transaction. Richard leaned forward coldly. Love is temporary. Power lasts forever. Ethan stood immediately. You're miserable, Dad. Richard's face hardened. And you're naive. The next evening, the Wellington Gala overflowed with politicians, celebrities, and wealthy elites. Amara watched preparations quietly from upstairs while workers rushed around decorating the mansion. She hated these events. Everyone looked perfect while secretly competing with each other. Suddenly, Ethan appeared behind her. You're hiding. You're supposed to be downstairs. I escaped. Amara smiled slightly. You're terrible at acting rich. I am rich. You act like you hate it. Ethan stepped closer. Come with me tonight. To the gala? Yes. She nearly laughed. Your father would faint. That sounds entertaining. Amara shook her head immediately. No. Why? Because people like me don't belong in rooms like that. Ethan's expression softened. You belong anywhere you want. Before she could answer, footsteps approached. Richard appeared. The moment he saw them standing close together, rage flashed across his face. Amara, he said coldly, Victoria will be arriving shortly. Make sure the guest rooms are prepared properly. Amara nodded quietly. Yes, sir. Richard looked directly at Ethan. You will escort Victoria personally tonight. Ethan didn't respond. Richard moved closer to Amara deliberately. Some women understand their place. Others become dangerous when they forget it. Amara lowered her eyes silently. Ethan clenched his fists. Stop threatening her. Richard smiled coldly. Then stop embarrassing me. Later that night, luxury cars filled the mansion driveway. Victoria Wellington stepped out elegantly in a sparkling silver dress. She immediately kissed Ethan on the cheek. There you are. Ethan forced a smile. Victoria. Amara watched quietly from upstairs. Something painful twisted inside her chest. Victoria was everything Richard wanted. Rich, beautiful, powerful, the kind of woman who belonged beside Ethan publicly, unlike her. Throughout the evening, Richard intentionally kept Ethan beside Victoria. Every time Ethan tried leaving, his father stopped him. Meanwhile, Amara served drinks silently through the crowd, pretending she wasn't hurting. Then she overheard two wealthy women gossiping nearby. That servant girl thinks Ethan actually likes her. These poor girls always dream too big. She'll learn. Amara quickly walked away before tears formed. But Richard noticed everything, and finally he decided it was time. The next morning, one of the housekeepers approached Amara nervously. Mr. Cole wants to see you privately. Amara's stomach tightened instantly. She entered Richard's office carefully. Richard sat behind his desk calmly. Sit. Amara remained standing. I'm fine here. Richard studied her for a moment. Then he opened a drawer slowly and placed several photographs on the table. Amara's heart stopped. The photos showed Ethan and Victoria together at the gala. One picture showed Victoria kissing Ethan near the garden balcony. Richard spoke quietly. Their engagement will be announced soon. Amara stared at the photos silently. Her chest felt numb. No. Richard folded his hands calmly. You're a smart girl, Amara. Surely you didn't think a billionaire heir would marry a servant's daughter. Ethan's smile in the photo destroyed her completely. Richard continued. You were entertainment, nothing more. Tears burned behind Amara's eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. You're lying. Am I? Richard handed her another document. It was a newspaper draft announcing the engagement partnership between the Cole and Wellington families. Everything suddenly felt real. He didn't tell you because men like Ethan enjoy temporary excitement before settling down properly. Amara shook her head weakly. No. Richard's voice became colder. If you truly care about him, you'll leave before you ruin his future. Amara could barely breathe. Every insecurity she ever carried suddenly exploded inside her. Maybe Grace was right. Maybe she never belonged in Ethan's world. Richard leaned back slowly. I can make your mother's life comfortable. Money, housing, security. All you need to do is disappear quietly. That sentence shattered the last piece of her heart. You think I'm with him for money? Richard didn't answer. He didn't need to. Amara grabbed the photos with trembling hands and rushed out before he could see her crying. That evening, Ethan searched the entire mansion for her. Finally, he found her outside, near the back gate, holding a suitcase. His face changed immediately. What's going on? Amara avoided his eyes. I'm leaving. What? My mother and I are moving. Why? She finally looked at him. Her eyes were filled with heartbreak. You should have told me. Told you what? About Victoria. Ethan frowned in confusion. What about her? Amara threw the engagement photos toward him. They're announcing your engagement. Ethan stared at the photos in disbelief. This is nonsense, but not enough nonsense to stop you from kissing her. That meant nothing. Amara laughed painfully through tears. To you, maybe. Ethan grabbed her hands desperately. Amara, listen to me. I love you. But you'll marry her. No. Your father already decided. I don't care what he wants. Amara pulled away emotionally. You say that now because this is exciting, but one day you'll wake up and realize your father was right. Ethan's voice broke slightly. Why are you doing this? Because I finally understand my place. That's not true. It is. Ethan grabbed her face desperately. Look at me. I choose you. Amara's tears finally fell freely. But your world never will. Before Ethan could stop her, she stepped back. Then another voice interrupted. Amara. Grace stood nearby, crying softly. It's time to go. Ethan looked between them in shock. You knew about this? Grace lowered her eyes painfully. Please forgive us. No, Ethan whispered. No, you can't leave like this. Amara picked up her suitcase slowly. I'm sorry. Then she turned and walked away. Ethan ran after her desperately, but security guards suddenly blocked him. Richard had ordered the gates locked. Move, Ethan shouted furiously. But by the time he reached the road outside, Amara was gone, completely gone. That night, Ethan destroyed almost everything inside his room. Glass shattered, furniture broke. His screams echoed through the mansion. Richard entered calmly. You'll thank me someday. Ethan turned slowly. His eyes were filled with hatred. You destroyed the only real thing in my life. Richard's face remained emotionless. No, I saved your future. Ethan stepped closer dangerously. If I ever become like you, I'll hate myself forever. Then he walked away, and from that moment forward, something inside Ethan Cole died. Before the final part begins, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and comment below if you think Amara made the right decision, because the reunion waiting ahead is something nobody will expect. 5 years later, the city barely recognized Amara Daniels. The quiet nanny's daughter, who once hid sketches inside a tiny servant room, had transformed into one of the fastest rising fashion entrepreneurs in the country. Her designs were everywhere. Celebrities wore her clothing. Luxury magazines fought for interviews. And the name Amara Daniels now carried power. But success had not healed her heart. Late one evening, Amara stood alone inside her fashion studio, reviewing designs, while rain tapped softly against the windows. One of her assistants rushed inside excitedly. Miss Daniels, the Cole Corporation accepted the partnership meeting. Amara froze instantly. The room suddenly felt smaller. The Cole Corporation. Yes, this could take your brand international. Her chest tightened painfully. After 5 years, that name still hurt. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Cole sat inside a massive office overlooking the skyline. Cold, emotionless, untouchable. The cheerful young man who once laughed with Amara in roadside restaurants no longer existed. Employees feared him now. Even Richard had started respecting the ruthless businessman Ethan became. But beneath the expensive suits and power, he was empty. One of his managers entered carefully. "Sir, tomorrow's meeting with Daniels Fashion has been confirmed." Ethan signed documents without looking up. "Fine." Then he suddenly paused. Slowly, he lifted his head. "Wait, Daniels?" "Yes, sir. The owner is Amara Daniels." Silence. The manager shifted nervously. Ethan's expression became unreadable. "Leave." The moment the door closed, Ethan stood immediately. For the first time in years, his hands shook. The next evening, luxury executives filled the Cole Corporation conference hall. Amara stepped out of the elevator elegantly in a fitted emerald dress. Confidence surrounded her naturally now. Every head turned. Employees whispered immediately, "That's Amara Daniels? She's stunning. She built a billion-dollar brand from nothing." But Amara heard none of it, because across the room, Ethan was staring at her. Neither moved. 5 years of pain hung silently between them. Ethan looked older, harder. His eyes no longer carried warmth. Amara's heart betrayed her instantly, because despite everything, she still loved him. Ethan finally walked toward her slowly. "Amara." His voice alone nearly destroyed her composure. "Ethan." For a moment neither knew what to say. Then Ethan glanced at her hand subtly. No ring. Something inside him relaxed. Amara noticed. "You still do that," she said quietly. "Do what?" "Check if I belong to someone else." Ethan stared at her carefully. "And do you?" Amara ignored the question. "We're here for business." His jaw tightened slightly. So cold. "You taught me." That one sentence hit harder than she intended. The meeting itself became torture. Every glance felt personal. Every silence felt heavy. Executives discussed profits and contracts, while Ethan and Amara secretly fought emotions neither fully buried. After the meeting ended, everyone slowly left the room, until only Ethan and Amara remained. The silence became unbearable. "You disappeared," Ethan finally said quietly. Amara laughed bitterly. "You got engaged." "I what?" She turned sharply. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Pretend you don't know." Ethan moved closer. "There was never an engagement." Amara's breathing slowed. "What?" "Victoria kissed me once at that gala because our parents were discussing business. That's all." Amara stared at him silently. Then realization slowly entered her face. "The photos. My father." Everything suddenly made sense. The fake newspaper announcement, Richard's manipulation, the lies. Ethan stepped closer painfully. "You left me without even listening." Tears gathered in Amara's eyes immediately. "Because I believed you chose them over me." "I chose you." His voice echoed through the empty room. Both froze. Years of emotions cracked open instantly. Ethan looked away first. "You have no idea what losing you did to me." Amara's voice broke softly. "You think it was easy for me?" Ethan looked back at her. For one dangerous second, all the old feelings returned completely. Then another voice interrupted. "Ethan?" Richard Cole entered the room slowly. The moment he saw Amara, his expression changed. Shock, then discomfort. Amara stood stiffly. "Mr. Cole." Richard forced a polite smile. "Miss Daniels, congratulations on your success. Amara answered calmly, "Thank you." But the tension was unbearable. Ethan suddenly spoke coldly. "You lied to us." Richard's expression hardened immediately. "This is not the place. You destroyed our relationship." Executives outside turned nervously toward the shouting. Richard lowered his voice sharply. "You're acting emotional. You manipulated her." Richard glanced briefly at Amara. "I protected this family." Ethan laughed bitterly. "No, you destroyed it." Amara quickly grabbed her bag. "I should leave." Ethan turned immediately. "Amara, wait." But she was already gone. That night, Ethan stormed into his father's office furious. "You're going to tell me everything." Richard remained calm. "There's nothing left to discuss." Ethan slammed the desk violently. "You stole 5 years from us." Richard's patience finally cracked. "I did what was necessary." "For what? Power. For survival." Ethan stared at him angrily. "You never cared whether I was happy." Richard suddenly looked exhausted. "Happiness doesn't protect families like ours." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You really are lonely." Before Richard could answer, he suddenly coughed violently. Blood stained his hand. Ethan froze instantly. Richard quickly hid it. But it was too late. A few days later, Ethan received the truth from the family doctor. Richard was seriously ill. Advanced heart complications. The billionaire who once controlled everything was slowly dying. Meanwhile, Amara sat inside her apartment staring out the window while memories flooded back painfully. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Grace entered quietly. "You still love him?" Amara smiled sadly. "I tried not to." Grace sat beside her slowly. "There's something I never told you." Amara frowned slightly. "What?" Grace's hands trembled. "The night your father died." Amara's expression changed immediately. "What about it?" Grace lowered her eyes painfully. "It wasn't an accident." Silence. Amara's heartbeat slowed. "What are you talking about?" Grace's voice broke. "Richard Cole caused the crash." The world stopped. Amara stared at her mother in horror. "What?" "He was drunk after a business party. Your father confronted him during the argument. Then the accident happened." Amara stood instantly. "No." Grace began crying. "Richard paid everyone to keep quiet. Police, witnesses, everyone." Amara's breathing became uneven. "You knew this whole time?" "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me." Tears exploded down Amara's face. "My father died because of him." Grace nodded weakly. Amara stepped backward in disbelief. Suddenly, every memory connected together. Richard's hatred, his manipulation, his obsession with control. It all came from guilt. And now the man she still loved was the son of the man who destroyed her family. The next day, Ethan arrived outside Amara's fashion studio unexpectedly. Before he could speak, Amara slapped him hard across the face. Employees nearby gasped. Ethan looked stunned. "What happened?" Tears burned in her eyes. "Your father killed my father." The color drained completely from Ethan's face. "What?" "He caused the accident." "No, that's impossible." "Ask him." Ethan stared at her speechlessly. "He destroyed my family," Amara whispered painfully. "And then he destroyed us too." For the first time in years, Ethan felt completely shattered. That night, he confronted Richard again, and this time, the truth could no longer hide. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Because forgiveness is about to face its hardest test in the emotional final ending. Ethan stormed into his father's bedroom like a man ready for war. Richard sat near the window, wrapped in silence. Weaker than before, but still carrying the same cold presence that once terrified everyone around him. The moment he saw Ethan's face, he knew. "She told you." Ethan's eyes burned with rage. "You killed her father." Richard closed his eyes briefly. "It was an accident." "You covered it up." Richard looked away silently. "That man was my friend," he said quietly. "We argued that night. I was drunk." He stepped in front of the car too suddenly. "Stop!" Ethan shouted. His voice shook violently. "For years you watched Amara suffer while hiding this." Richard's expression hardened defensively. "I paid for her education. I made sure her mother kept her job. I tried to help them." Ethan laughed bitterly. "You call that helping?" Richard suddenly slammed his fist weakly against the armrest. "You know nothing about guilt." Silence filled the room. Richard's breathing became uneven. "For 20 years, he whispered. "I woke up every night hearing the sound of that crash." Ethan stared at him with disgust. "So you destroyed my life too?" Richard looked directly at his son. "I was trying to protect you." "From what? Love?" "From pain." Ethan's eyes filled with emotion instantly. "You are the pain." That sentence shattered whatever strength Richard still carried. Ethan turned and walked out, and for the first time in his life, Richard Cole cried. The next morning, Amara stood alone inside her fashion showroom preparing for the biggest event of her career. Models moved around quickly. Designers adjusted fabrics. Cameras flashed everywhere, but Amara felt empty. Her assistant approached carefully. "Are you okay?" Amara forced a smile. "I'm fine." But she wasn't, because no matter how much she tried to hate Ethan, her heart still remembered the boy who once sat beside her under the stars talking about freedom. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're lying." Amara turned sharply. Ethan stood near the entrance. His eyes looked exhausted. Neither moved for a moment. Finally, Amara spoke coldly. "You shouldn't be here. I needed to see you." "There's nothing left to say." "There's everything left to say." Amara looked away immediately. "I know what my father did." Pain crossed Ethan's face instantly. "And I'm sorry." Amara laughed bitterly. "You didn't kill my father." "But I became like the man who did." That sentence hit her hard. Ethan stepped closer slowly. "When you left, I stopped believing in people." Amara's eyes softened slightly despite herself. "I searched for you for almost a year," he continued quietly. "Every city, every contact, nothing." Tears slowly formed in her eyes again. "I thought you hated me." "I hated myself." The silence between them became painfully emotional. Then Ethan reached into his pocket slowly. Amara frowned. He pulled out something old and folded carefully. Her sketch. The very first fashion design she ever showed him years ago. "You kept that?" "I kept everything." Amara's composure finally cracked. Tears rolled down her face freely. Ethan moved closer, carefully. "I know I don't deserve another chance." "No, but I'm asking anyway." Amara closed her eyes painfully. "You can't ask me to forget what your father did." "I'm not." "Then what are you asking?" Ethan's voice broke slightly. "For a chance to love you correctly this time." Before Amara could answer, Ethan's phone suddenly rang repeatedly. He answered quickly. Then his expression changed completely. "What?" Fear entered his eyes instantly. "I'm coming now." The call ended. Amara's heartbeat tightened. "What happened?" Ethan looked shaken. "My father collapsed." Hours later, the hospital waiting room sat in complete silence. Ethan stood alone, staring through the glass windows while doctors rushed around urgently. For the first time in years, he looked lost. Amara arrived quietly beside him. Ethan looked surprised. You came. Amara folded her arms tightly. I came for closure, nothing more. But deep down, she knew that wasn't fully true. A doctor approached moments later. Mr. Cole's condition is critical. He's asking to see both of you. Ethan and Amara exchanged tense glances before entering the hospital room slowly. Richard looked weaker than either of them had ever seen. Machines beeped softly around him. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Richard looked directly at Amara. I owe you the truth. Amara remained silent. Richard's eyes filled with regret. Your father saved my life that night. Amara frowned slightly. Richard swallowed painfully. After the accident, the car caught fire. I was unconscious. Your father pulled me out before. His voice broke weakly. Before he died. Tears gathered in Amara's eyes immediately. Richard continued. I was ashamed, cowardly. I used money to bury everything because I couldn't face what I had done. The room became painfully quiet. Richard looked toward Ethan. And I destroyed your happiness because I was afraid love would make you weak the same way it made me weak. Ethan's jaw tightened emotionally. You never understood love at all. Richard nodded slowly. You're right. Then he turned back toward Amara. I don't expect forgiveness. Amara's tears fell silently now. But before I die, I need to say I'm sorry. Real regret filled his voice completely. No pride, no power, just guilt, and somehow that hurt even more. Richard slowly removed his oxygen mask. Ethan moved closer immediately. Richard grabbed his son's hand weakly. Don't become me. His breathing became shaky. Choose love while you still can. Then Richard looked at Amara one final time. I hope someday you find peace. Moments later, hospital alarms suddenly exploded loudly. Doctors rushed inside immediately. Ethan grabbed his father's hand desperately. Dad! Machines beeped violently. Amara stepped backward in shock. Then after several terrifying moments, everything went silent. Completely silent. Richard Cole was gone. A week later, the city gathered for Richard's funeral. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities. But none of the wealth surrounding his funeral could hide the sadness hanging over the family. After the burial, Ethan stood alone beside the cemetery long after everyone left. Amara approached quietly. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ethan finally whispered, I spent so many years hating him. Amara looked at the grave silently. So did I. Ethan laughed weakly through emotion. And now I don't know what to feel. Amara's voice softened. You don't have to forgive him immediately. Ethan looked at her carefully. But you did. Amara stared at the sky quietly. No, she paused. But I'm trying to. Ethan's eyes filled instantly because after everything, Amara still chose kindness. Weeks later, Amara's biggest fashion show finally arrived. The venue overflowed with cameras, celebrities, and powerful investors. Backstage, Amara adjusted her dress nervously while her assistant smiled excitedly. You did it. Amara looked around slowly. Years ago, she was sketching secretly inside servant quarters. Now, the world knew her name. But one thing still felt missing. Then suddenly, the lights dimmed. The audience quieted. Amara stepped onto the stage gracefully as applause erupted across the hall. She smiled emotionally, but before she could speak, a familiar voice interrupted. Before this show begins, there's something I need to say. The crowd turned immediately. Ethan walked slowly onto the stage. Murmurs spread everywhere. Amara's heart pounded violently. Ethan stopped directly in front of her. Then, in front of the entire audience, he dropped to one knee. Gasps filled the hall instantly. Ethan looked up at her with tears in his eyes. I loved you when we had nothing. His voice shook emotionally. I loved you when I lost you. Amara covered her mouth as tears spilled freely down her face. And after everything, after pain, betrayal, and years apart, Ethan pulled out a ring slowly. I still love you. The room became completely silent. Ethan's eyes never left hers. So this time, choose me too. Amara cried harder instantly. For several emotional seconds, she couldn't speak. Then finally, she nodded. Yes! The audience exploded into applause. Ethan stood immediately and pulled her into his arms. And for the first time in years, both of them finally felt whole again. The cameras flashed wildly around them while Amara whispered softly against his chest, "We survived everything." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "No," he whispered back, "we forgave everything." And sometimes, forgiveness becomes the greatest love story of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below your favorite moment from Ethan and Amara's journey. See you in the next emotional story.